All right, so get ready to dive into something that, well, teachers, trainers, really anyone who's ever had to explain anything will appreciate. And that's effective assessment design. We're talking about more than just, quizzes and tests here.
Yeah, it's about making sure those assessments are actually useful, not just boxes to check off. You can think of it like building a house.
Right.
You need the right blueprints, materials, and the execution all aligned to create something, sturdy and purposeful.
I love that analogy. And our sources keep mentioning this idea of constructive alignment. How does that actually play out in, say, designing a training program?
So imagine you're teaching someone to bake bread.
Okay.
You wouldn't just, hand them a recipe and the bag of flour, then declare them a master baker after a single loaf, right?
Uh-huh.
You'd walk them through each step, explain why each ingredient matters, let them try different techniques, and give feedback along the way. That's what constructive alignment is all about.
So it's that connection between what you're teaching, how you're teaching it, and how you're measuring if it actually, stuck.
Yep, I get it. Exactly. And here's where it gets fascinating. When things are aligned like this, it actually taps into how our brains learn best.
Really?
We're wired to seek patterns and make connections. When assessments are seamlessly woven into the learning journey, information just clicks into place. And we move from surface level memorization to deeper understanding.
That makes sense. It's like that aha moment when you finally understand something you've been struggling with. Suddenly it all just clicks.
Yeah.
Now, our sources break down assessments into three main types: diagnostic, formative, and summative. Can we kind of unpack those a bit more?
Absolutely. So think of diagnostic assessments like a doctor's checkup. Before prescribing any sort of treatment, a doctor needs a clear picture of your current health, right? Similarly, before designing a course or a training, educators use diagnostic assessments to understand what learners already know and where the gaps might be. This way, they can tailor their approach to meet individual needs. It's all about personalized learning.
Okay, so diagnostic is about understanding the starting point. What about formative assessments? I remember our sources using a really great analogy for this one.
Oh, right, right. They compared it to tasting the soup while cooking.
Okay, yeah.
You're constantly checking the flavor, adding maybe a pinch of salt here, a dash of pepper there, making adjustments along the way to ensure the final product is delicious.
So you're providing that ongoing feedback and making adjustments throughout the learning process. So it's not like they just get to the very end and
Exactly.
are either good or bad at it.
Precisely. And that brings us to summative assessments. The final dish, so to speak. This is the big presentation, the certification exam, the moment where learners demonstrate what they've learned overall. So while formative assessments are about guiding the process, summative assessments are about evaluating that end product.
So it's not about, you don't want to just bombard learners with a bunch of high-pressure tests right off the bat, right? Our sources seem to emphasize a need for balance in this area.
Absolutely. Placing too much weight on a single assessment can create unnecessary anxiety and may not accurately reflect what someone truly knows or can do. It's crucial to find that sweet spot where assessments are challenging enough to be meaningful, but not so overwhelming that they overshadow the joy of learning.
Which brings us to another key point from our research: engagement. Our guide stresses that how we present information is just as important as the information itself. So it's not just about the what, it's also about the how.
Right. Imagine sitting through a lecture where someone just drones on and on, versus participating in an interactive workshop where you get to apply the concepts you're learning in real time. Which one do you think would lead to better understanding and retention?
The interactive workshop for sure. It reminds me of those online learning platforms that use like gamification and interactive elements to make learning more engaging. Like I remember using tools like Quizlet and Kahoot back in school, and those were always more fun than just staring at a textbook.
Exactly. And it's not just about making things, fun. When we tap into those elements of curiosity, challenge, and collaboration, we create an environment where learning becomes almost addictive. And that's where, the real artistry of assessment design comes in, finding those creative ways to make those assessments feel like less of a chore and more like a natural extension of the learning process.
So it's about making those assessments work for the learning, not against it. And we've talked about aligning assessments with those clear learning objectives, but our sources had a lot to say about really getting into the nitty-gritty of those objectives.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not enough to just have, a vague idea of what you want learners to know or be able to do. Let's say your goal is for someone to write a persuasive essay. You
Okay.
can't just leave it at that, right?
Okay.
What does persuasive even mean in this context? What are the specific elements of a persuasive
Uh,
essay?
you need to define those expectations clearly, both for the educator and the learner. Otherwise, it's like trying to hit a target in the dark.
Exactly. And that clarity extends to the feedback we provide as well. Remember how we talked about feedback being descriptive, not just evaluative? When
Mm.
you combine those clear learning objectives with detailed descriptive feedback, you create this really powerful loop that truly drives learning forward.
Like having a roadmap and a compass for your educational journey. Speaking of guidance, our sources also emphasize that feedback shouldn't be a one-way street.
It's a conversation, right? Imagine getting like a graded paperback with just a letter grade at the top.
Right.
Not very helpful, is it?
Not really.
Now imagine receiving that same paper with, thoughtful comments in the margins, highlighting what worked well, and offering specific suggestions for improvement.
That's the difference between simply evaluating and actually guiding the learning process, right?
Exactly.
Learners need to feel comfortable asking questions, seeking clarification, and really engaging in a dialogue about their work.
Precisely. And this actually ties into another crucial aspect of assessment design, and that's accessibility. Our guide really hammered home the importance of creating assessments that are inclusive and equitable for all learners.
Yeah, we need to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to demonstrate their understanding. And that's regardless of their background, learning style, or any disabilities they might have.
Right.
This could mean, providing materials in multiple formats, offering different ways to showcase learning, or even just being mindful of the language and examples we use.
It's about recognizing that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach to learning.
Yeah.
Each student is unique with their own strengths, challenges, and preferred ways of engaging with information.
Speaking of unique learners, one challenge that stood out in our sources was how to design effective assessments in the age of, remote learning.
Ah, yes. The ever-evolving landscape of education, the rise of online and blended learning has been, remarkable, but it definitely presents unique challenges when it comes to assessment.
So how do we make sure those online assessments are as rigorous, as engaging, and as equitable as their in-person counterparts?
Well, there's no easy answer, but our sources do offer some valuable guidance. For example, they highlight the importance of leveraging technology, not just for, delivering assessments, but also for making them more interactive and engaging.
Right, so we talked about those tools like Quizlet and Kahoots, but there are so many innovative edtech tools out there these days. It's about using technology to create those aha moments, even in a virtual setting.
Exactly. It's about designing online assessments that kind of mirror real-world scenarios, encourage collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, and let's not forget the importance of maintaining that human connection even when we're not physically together.
So that means regular check-ins, personalized feedback, opportunities for, virtual collaboration. These all play a vital role in creating a supportive and engaging online learning environment. Our sources also highlighted the need to find a good balance between those low-stakes and high-stakes assessments.
It's a constant balancing act. On one hand, those frequent low-stakes assessments, they provide valuable feedback along the way that allows students to track their progress without the pressure of like a major grade. On the other hand, those more summative, high-stakes assessments are still necessary to evaluate a student's overall understanding at the end of the day.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where assessments challenge students without being overly stressful. We want them to stretch their abilities without feeling defeated.
Exactly. And that's where careful planning, clear communication, and a deep understanding of your learner's needs are absolutely essential.
It's really amazing how much goes into designing assessments that are truly effective. I mean, it's clearly so much more than just, slapping a grade on something and calling it a day.
It really is. It's about guiding, engaging, and ultimately empowering learners to really own their education.
And one of the things that really struck me in our research for this episode was this real emphasis on moving away from that old memorize and regurgitate model of education that a lot of us grew up with, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're preparing learners for a world that's changing faster than ever, right? And to thrive in that kind of world, they need to be able to think critically, to solve those really complex problems, and to just adapt to new situations as they come up.
And that's where I think problem-based learning comes in, or PBL, as I've seen it called in some of these sources.
Right.
Our sources talked about how effective it can be, even though it might be a bit more time-consuming on the front end to design well.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about problem-based learning that makes it so effective?
So imagine instead of, just lecturing students about a certain topic, you present them with a real world problem.
Okay.
That directly relates to what you're teaching.
Okay.
So let's say you're teaching a class about climate change.
Okay.
Instead of just lecturing, you could present a scenario where students have to, develop a plan to reduce their school's carbon footprint.
That's so much more engaging than just, like you were saying, reading about it in a textbook.
Absolutely. It allows them to really apply what they're learning in a tangible way.
So it's not just about, finding the right answer.
Right.
PBL encourages collaboration, right?
Absolutely.
Critical thinking, creativity.
All of that.
Students have to, work together, analyze information,
Yeah.
weigh different options, come up with those innovative solutions. And these are the skills that'll serve them well in, really any field that they choose to pursue.
Exactly.
And it goes back to that idea of constructive alignment, even in a PBL scenario. Those real-world problems need to be super carefully chosen to actually support those learning objectives.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all still connected.
It is. It's like building a bridge, right? Every single element from the foundation to the individual beams needs to be strategically designed and interconnected to create a structure that can withstand, the weight of what we're trying to transport across it.
And our sources also highlighted some really fantastic resources and case studies that bring these principles to life. And I was fascinated by all the different ways that real-world case studies are being used in education these days.
There's something really powerful about bringing those real-world scenarios into the classroom. Learning suddenly becomes so much more relatable and relevant for the students.
For sure. One source even mentioned a collection of 30 diverse case studies spanning like everything from elementary education to like professional development programs.
Wow.
It shows that this approach can work for, really for learners of all ages
Right.
and across a really wide range of subjects.
And it's important to note that these case studies, they aren't just about showcasing those, success stories.
Right.
They often present, challenges, ethical dilemmas, or even examples of what not to do, which can be just as valuable, really.
It's about learning from those mistakes,
Yeah.
analyzing different perspectives and really understanding the complexities of how decisions are made in the real world. It's about like going beyond the textbook and really grappling with the nuances of how things actually work.
And we can't forget the power of storytelling, right? Case studies are often told in a very narrative way, which can really make that learning experience that much more engaging and memorable for students.
So as we resurface from this really fascinating deep dive into effective assessment design, I think if there's one thing that's clear, it's that it's not about, trying to find the perfect formula or anything. It's more about, it's more about being willing to learn, to adapt, and to constantly evolve our approaches to actually meet the needs of our learners.
It is. It's about remembering that assessment. When it's done well, it isn't just about, measuring what someone knows at this exact moment in time. It's about creating opportunities for growth, for those, those aha moments of discovery, and hopefully sparking a lifelong love of learning.
So whether you're a teacher, a trainer, a mentor, or just someone who's, passionate about helping others learn and grow, I hope this deep dive has given you some, new ideas and maybe even some inspiration to take back to your own work.
Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those aha moments coming.
I love it.
Yeah.
Until next time, everyone.